be prepared for play that role. We know we shy away from it.
Good morning, fellow Ambazonians. Today, na number 16 day, when a Wednesday for this number 11 month for the year 2022. My name na Capo Daniel. I am the Deputy Defense Chief of the Ambazonian Defense Forces, the military wing of the Ambazonian Governing Council. I am the spokesman of the organization. Today, I go want to respond for a message put out there by Professor Carlson ANYANGWE. Just for our country people them, if you don't know, Professor Carlson ANYANGWE na a big Ambazonian lawyer, na also a researcher, na a professor of law and research. That means a person where he do study, if he study things them right very, very well, and he do research. He also teach international law, criminal law, and procedure and human right law. So now a renowned Ambazonian lawyer, we done day for Ambazonian liberation struggle for many years. He get a very track record, a good track record where anybody if you know which way be, which way done do and a lot of people that don't come out for denounce the message we put them out, calling it hypocritical. And I think say my own country people them all wanna also need for hear from me exactly which way it go on. And as I be the spokesperson for the governing council, definitely what I say also will also include the perspective of which way the officials and the militants of the Ambazonian governing council and independent Ambazonian actors that are standing with the principle that the governing council stands to uphold. I will also respond to this audio. I will put things in perspective. As you know very well, na a button we would carry them, like General Ivory talk, for the governing council for play this vanguard role. We are fair, we are balanced, we are unafraid, we are bold, fresh, and this is as good as it gets. So we'll play the audio for Carlson ANYANGWE. I will give you a little bit background as we go to go, and I go to bring up other issue them for make it make sense for my own personal people, then my own country people, then within the ground, and wanna be the most smartest people. If you are listening to Capo Daniel, then you are one of the 10% of the smartest Ambazonians who go for quality and intellectual content, not just noise. So let's listen to the audio.
At a time when most people now, you see them say they are frontline leaders and so on, they hadn't even the slightest clue what problem we're facing, you know. So when I look at them and sometimes what they say and what they do, I just wonder. But right now, I think.
So this is really unfortunate that you find somebody who is highly regarded like Professor Carlson ANYANGWE will be bad-mouthing the frontline leaders who have sacrificed themselves to defend Ambazonia. And like he talk, he done there for this struggle for 40 years. But he talk, say he observe the frontline leaders. Sometimes they talk in a way as he describe them. And but make him know something. With all the knowledge we Carlson ANYANGWE get them, he never take the front line for lead their actions against La Republique and the confrontation with them. That is why you call these people who are called frontline leaders, because they have championed the cause for the Ambazonian common people. They have risen up. They are not called frontline leaders because of organizations. They are called frontline leaders because they have stood in front of everybody to receive the bullets. They are not different from the soldiers on the ground. For anybody to badmouth people who are in the front line, then that person is overwhelmed with ego, or what Professor Carlson ANYANGWE famously called the peacock syndromes. I think he has the peacock syndromes in this case, but nevertheless, let us go through what he has said.
We've got to a stage where you have to speak truth and stand up for certain truths, for certain things, so that this struggle does not die.
So Carlson ANYANGWE, he talk say, you comes a time when you have to speak the truth. And I think say, I go give you credit and I go play a track record. Professor Carlson ANYANGWE has come out to say that, looking at it in hindsight, the creation of the IG was a big mistake. That is his own word. He did so in the interview at the ACN, the Ambazonian Communication Network, in an interview that I was a panel. Dr. Abu Free was a panel member, and Lucas Asu was a panel member. He apologized and said, looking at it from hindsight, it was a big mistake to create the so-called IG with the idea of having a government. But this is the track record of Professor Carlson ANYANGWE. The same Professor Carlson ANYANGWE was the representative of the SCACUF that was sent to America to sign on behalf of Ambazonia with the Foley Hawk law firm, who publicly advised Ambazonia the effect of creating an IG. We were told by the Foley Hawk law firm that if we create a so-called government, it is going to destroy the struggle, cripple us and divide us, as that is their experience internationally. Professor Carlson ANYANGWE was there. He listened to that advice, he signed the document, but he went ahead and masterminded and participated in the creation of the IG without challenging Seseko Ayoktabi, but facilitated and designed the IG. I was there. In the process of that IG, you have Tassan Wilfred, who was the head of the Liberation Council. That means the constituent member that was supposed to be a supervisory body of SCACUF. He was kicked out of the meeting. He had no idea. He was not given an agenda. All the nationalist movement who owns the SCACUF, who formed the SCACUF, were all kicked out. Carlson ANYANGWE, nevertheless, with the illegality of that conclave, went ahead to create the IG. And he has apologized. Honorable Joseph Weber have described the IG as the worst thing that has ever happened to Ambazonia. It is the curse of Ambazonia. Professor Carlson ANYANGWE today is still a member of the IG and is their so-called Secretary of State of the IG. Remember, if you, Carlson ANYANGWE, you have said that the IG was a mistake, yet you are still an IG official, the good news is you know that it is wrong. That is why in every meeting Professor Carlson ANYANGWE goes, in every interview, he refused to be called an IG official and preferred to represent himself in his personal capacity. This is hypocritical. This shows lack of boldness. It shows lack of a conscience. If you are in an organization that you know it was a mistake in hindsight, why would you continue to be there if you cannot succeed to change it to be what it is? So Professor Carlson ANYANGWE should be honest with himself. He is representing himself. He is in the IG. For whatever reason, he should grasp that. Either you are part of the IG of Seseko or you are not. Be honest with yourself, Professor, and speak the truth. You know the IG was a mistake. You have admitted it. What the heck are you doing there? Let us continue.
To speak truth and stand up for certain truths, for certain things, so that this struggle does not die, so that our freedom fighters feel encouraged, so that our freedom fighters down on the ground, they know that there are people backing them up, like I said.
So Professor Carlson ANYANGWE, he said, you have so that the struggle does not die. This is somebody who knows where the struggle is. He knows how we have brought the back of La Republique to Cameroon. He have seen the governing council of Ambazonia brought in the Norwegians, the Irish people. These are the people, the states that host the president of the governing council and the vice president of the governing council. No other movement have brought in a single state partner on the table for Ambazonia. This is somebody who is aware of the General Assembly conversation between the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, and the message to Mbela that have instructed him and tell him the coalition of the international partners that have told Paul Biya to stop his war of subjugation in Ambazonia, or the Cameroon state will see this case being brought to where he does not want it to be brought to. He knows we have broken the backbone of La Republique. He knows that La Republique have blinked. for somebody to be telling the people, giving the perception that the struggle can die or the struggle can die when he knows very well how fatly we have won La Republic. It is both hypocritical and it is condemnable. Why would Professor Carlson ANYANGWE make such a statement when he knows the truth about what is going on? But let's continue. When the freedom fighters, 39 of them, were being slaughtered and some of them buried alive in Bui, where was Professor Carlson ANYANGWE? When General Mba Ivor of the ADF was being haunted around on social media, being asked to be killed and called a common thief, where was Professor Carlson ANYANGWE? Where was Professor Carlson ANYANGWE when General Efang was kidnapped, was adopted by the TTA? Where was he? Where was he when General Capo, the ADF Supreme Commander of Bui, was arrested and tortured by Chacha for 1 month to denounce the Ambazonian Defense Forces? Where was he? Are they not freedom fighters? Let us listen anyway.
Without that backing, we shouldn't sit down and the diaspora and just expect them to do miracles. So, yes, definitely we will play that role. I think I speak for Maggie as well, but she will.
So, Professor Carlson ANYANGWE say we should not sit in the diaspora and expect miracles. That means we in the diaspora should make things happen. This is exactly what the Ambazonian Governing Council are doing. Dr. Cho Lucas Ayaba and the constituent members who formed the Governing Council did not sit in the diaspora and wait for miracles to happen. They selected the best of their military men, people who have fought on the ground. They came to ground zero, recruit soldiers, trained them and stayed with them in the bush for 9 months to plant the seed of self-defense. Dr. Cho Lucas Ayaba did not sit in the diaspora. He came to ground zero in Dadi and launched self-defense to protect the territorial integrity, sovereignty, and the Ambazonian people. We did not sit in the diaspora. We went on ground zero. We built a force that is capable to resist La Republic to Cameroon and bring them to their knees. And that is what we are doing in the Ambazonian Governing Council.
We will play that role. I think I speak for Maggie as well, but she will also speak too.
So Maggie Kilo, the lady Professor Carlson ANYANGWE is mentioning, who is now a member of the IGK, is somebody who have openly campaigned against Ambazonian resistance, blaming Ambazonian resistance for Cameroon atrocity and continued brutality against our people, irrespective of the fact that our struggle in self-defense was a matter of defense, self-defense. Maggie Kilo have actively and continue to campaign against even the ghost town, which is the only tool our public have after the banning of our nationalism to defend and speak up for their aspiration to be free. These are the people that Professor Carlson ANYANGWE is partnering with and that have taken hold of the IG.
The World Relief Fund is very, very important. It's indispensable. We need also to urge our people mount a campaign to ensure that the armed struggle on ground zero is depoliticized.
So Professor Carlson ANYANGWE is talking about the National Relief Fund, and I want him to ask himself, where is the fund that was raised for the big rubber gun? Which rubber gun was bought? Whose soldiers were paid? Whose soldiers' arms were being supported? And what are they doing with the funds? What would they do with the fund now that will be different from what they have done with the fund before? This is what we know. The IGK have no force on ground zero. There is no force that have paid allegiance to the IGK, despite the fact that there are many forces in ground zero who wants to work with the IGK. We have even pleaded with the IGK to even adopt and use people like Chris Bongam, who is very good in self-defense and coordination in ground zero, and bring in forces in Boyo, especially General Ni, General Ashu. These are soldiers who wants to work with the IGK, but they don't want to because they don't want to spend that money there. They prefer to spend the money in Kundengi, where we heard people are having an opportunity visit for over 150,000 per night. Nevertheless, it is their choice. You have people who wants to work. You have the forces, even in the forces of Black Snake in Nwa, that have become the new Nkambe in Ambazonia. They have brought them to give them over to the Ache of Sea. I mean, the IGK people have brought this to give us these forces. Simply, they don't want to take responsibility. The only force we have seen since Yerima was appointed that have made video in Ground Zero to pay allegiance to the IG care are the forces in Fear No Bullet in Manu. And still that same forces, the IGK have refused to adopt and take responsibility over them. The coordinator of the Manu Unity Warrior, which is made up of one group, because even when they will come and use their broad name, it does not even represent the forces in Manu. Manu is a disgrace to Ambazonia. These are places where there have been crimes against humanity, slaughtering of over 80 our people in Manu. They made video of those killings, go into a dire place and kill 14 individuals, slaughter them, and made a video, call their names. These are the forces that Seseko IG have influence over. Have they taken responsibility of their actions? Have they coordinated their actions? Even in Toronto, the representative of Fear No Bullet, that calls himself representative of Manu Unity Warrior, dissociated himself from the IG care, says that he does not act on behalf of the IG care and their forces do not have any relationship with the IG care. Even after the forces there had made a video for the IG care to justify collections of funds. Who is fooling who? Who wants to be honest and who is honest? We cannot continue to play this game when you have Professor Carlson ANYANGWE coming up, speaking in broad terms. Each time they address the Ambazonian people, they cannot address the Ambazonian people as the IG or the IG care because they are ashamed of what it is. It has been a disgrace and a humiliation and brought nothing but pain and division to our people.
I've never seen any armed struggle in the whole world, people fighting for decolonization, where the armed struggle is politicized. And this is what we keep on doing on a daily basis. And then we sit back and expect results. That should not happen.
So the thing is, each time the IG people talk, they talk in terms of the whole Ambazonia, but they are not actually representing the whole Ambazonia. They are a faction. They are a group. So when they talk about the politicization of defense, it is a politicization of their IG, are the restoration forces of the IG, as they choose to call them. Not the whole force. The ADF is not politicized. It is a well-structured force, a military that was built by recruitment, training, and empowerment of those forces. The IG groups, they think of themselves like the whole of Ambazonia when they are not. So when the group of IG, they are forces that have been deceived, misused by the same IG, the same group of people come together and they form unity. They call it unity. How can you unite with yourself? You now call it Ground Zero forces. You are a network of forces in Ground Zero. There are bigger forces under single control that are out of that your group, and it's your clown game. But yet you pretend to have exclusive representation of the country when you do not. You claim powers that you do not. You misrepresent yourself. You are a hypocrite and you are a liar. You lie even to yourself, and I'm convinced that the IG people are convinced of what they are saying. That is even more dangerous. People who have created a cocoon, delusional people, building a war in social media, far from reality. I'm sure when Professor Carlson ANYANGWE is talking about our freedom fighters, he means all fighters that includes the ADF. But actually, he fails to understand that, or fail to respect and appreciate the fact that the Ambazonian Governing Council is a properly constituted group of Ambazonians across the whole globe and in Ground Zero. And the ADF, a military wing, the most structured military wing that we have. He should respect that. The same Professor Carlson ANYANGWE have come on TV, prime time, and condemn the liberation tax that was instituted by the Ambazonian Governing Council, making a strong write-up with 4 points, labeling the liberation tax as a criminal activity, an activity with no legitimacy that is going to cause kidnapping for ransom, and call it a front for kidnapping for ransom. Not less than 1 year after, the same group of restoration forces on Ground Zero have come up to declare liberation tax openly. Professor Carlson ANYANGWE have not condemned them or called their liberation tax a front for kidnapping for ransom. But he has come and asked people to donate money and support those same forces. What a contradiction. You cannot claim the ADF is doing kidnapping for ransom by liberation tax, and then now the same forces that you were supporting are doing the same thing, and you are mute. So you are playing politics over the life of these heroes that you call, and you are politicizing self-defense. Not anybody else, but you.
Freedom fighters concentrate in doing what they are doing and stop politicizing them. Stop claiming them. Stop treating them as if they are slaves, they are houseboys, you give them 1 penny, and therefore they must be answered.
So the idea that Ambazonian fighters are being treated like slave by the diaspora do not exist in any group other than the IG. He says that they should stop making claims. This is a lack of respect for the institutions that Ambazonians themselves have formed. If you cannot respect Ambazonians, how can you expect people to respect Ambazonia? You have to respect that the claim of the governing council over its military wing is not a claim. They were trained. The ADF was formed. It was trained by their leadership. The other forces that have incorporated in them by the leaders that have been trained or that have chosen by their own free will to join that organization have come under that command and control structure because of its proper constitution and the policy it represents. The ADF relationship, the governing council relationship with their forces are not that of donors where you donate money and you expect things to happen. Professor Carlson ANYANGWE cannot be contradicting himself. You cannot say that the diaspora should not make claim, yet you expect the diaspora to play a positive role. You cannot condemn the governing council of one thing and yet give pass to the so-called restoration forces for the same thing. Let us be clear here. The IG have now denounced their name and they are calling their names the diaspora. They should leave us in the diaspora alone. La République du Cameroon at one time struggled to cut off the diaspora from the soldiers and from ground zero by even going to the extent of cutting up internet. Today we see the foolishness and unpatriotism of Ambazonians helping the enemy inadvertently to do the same. This nonsense should stop. If you have a problem with the leadership of the diaspora of the IG, call them by their name. If you are afraid to call the IG actors that have destroyed their forces, if you are afraid to call the IG officials that have instructed their forces to kill other forces, then you are not man enough to speak on behalf of the people of Ambazonia. You will lose respect and you will lose the trust that we have for you as somebody who have a huge potential and is an asset to our national liberation movement. Let it be clear to Ambazonians, it is not the diaspora that have failed the soldiers. The diaspora have been the most crucial component to develop our country before this liberation war, and they are a crucial part in leading our struggle in this liberation war. It is not the diaspora that have failed. It is the IG and its leadership that has failed. It is not the frontline leaders that have brought shame upon Ambazonia. It is the leadership of the IG. It is not the AGOFC that have called for soldiers to kill soldiers. It is only the IG that have declared civil war, asked soldiers to neutralize, to eliminate other soldiers unjustly. Today in Ground Zero, the so-called Ground Zero leadership that is emerging from Ground Zero, it is the same people coming back together, calling it unity. The problem of the IG is an ideological one, where a group of people see themselves as being exclusively representing the state interest. This undermines the Ambazonian people's right to properly and freely constitute themselves as much as they want and represent the interests of their state. Every group of Ambazonia have equal right, so long as we have not yet effectuated our independence and set up a government. We all have the same right to form organizations, to come together as Ambazonians and look for a way to protect our national interests. That right will never be undermined, and anybody or any organization that seeks to undermine these rights by claiming exclusive power is doing so at their own peril and will become a stumbling block like the IG have done and as Carlson ANYANGWE is doing today. This nonsense must stop. Have a good day, everybody. Shake, shake, day.